Let's stop pretending that she was just a girlfriend. This wasn't romance, it was recruitment. Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't just Epstein's companion, she was his credential, his connector, his camouflage. Let's rewind for a second. Her father was Robert Maxwell, British media tycoon, parliament member, and suspected intelligence asset. When his empire crumbled in scandal and he mysteriously fell off of his yacht, $500 million in pension money vanished into thin air. Take a look at this clip.
Publisher Robert Maxwell is dead. He disappeared overboard from his private yacht early this morning while cruising off the Canary Islands.
Trading in shares in Mirror Group newspapers and the Maxwell Communication Corporation has been suspended for the second time in a month. The companies asked the stock exchange to step in while the financial position of the Maxwell family's private businesses is being clarified.
Mirror Group newspapers has just said that significant assets of their pension fund had been lent or transferred to private companies controlled by Robert Maxwell, apparently without due authority.
I suppose for people like me, if the pension ceased, it would be a considerable blow. For some people, it would be a disaster.
As more details of the late Robert Maxwell's business dealings are uncovered, it's becoming clear that Britain's high street banks stand to lose the most from the collapse of the private companies. The scandal now threatens to become the biggest in British financial history.
After his death, Ghislaine fled to the US, disgraced, but still rich enough to swim in the elite circles. And that is when she met Epstein. Or, should we say, placed herself beside Epstein. Because let's be real, he didn't bring her into high society. She brought him. She gave him legitimacy, an accent, a last name that opened doors, and connections to the British aristocracy, Wall Street, academia, and elite science institutions. Take a look at this party photo. Ghislaine wasn't just arm candy. She was strategic placement. She's the one who made the introductions. She's the one who organized the homes, managed the staff, booked the flights, tracked the girls. She didn't witness the operation. She built the logistics of it. Multiple victims said the same thing. Ghislaine groomed them, befriended them, normalized the abuse. Take a look at this victim statement.
One of the things she was accused of lying about involved you. And you know, at trial, just so everyone remembers, your mom actually testified that when you went to the ranch in New Mexico in 1996, that Jeffrey Epstein had promised your mom you were going on a retreat and that there were dozens of other girls who were going to be there, that Ghislaine Maxwell was his wife. And then you got there and you were the only one. I believe that's what your mom testified at trial.
I mean, this was the one person who was held accountable for these crimes, and she was held accountable for her crimes, not for someone else's, but for the ones that she committed.
And what's wild is people trusted her because she was Maxwell's daughter, because she spoke with polish, because she moved like money. She made Epstein look safe. And once he looked safe, he could move anywhere. That's how he infiltrated scientific think tanks, Ivy League universities, intelligence-linked nonprofits, art galas, United Nations events. He didn't charm his way in. He was ushered in by Ghislaine. And when the walls closed in, she didn't flip. She stayed silent for decades. Only when the pressure from Epstein's arrest turned nuclear did she finally get arrested. But even then, no cameras in the courtroom, no public release of her black book, no client list. She took the heat, but not the matchbook. Take a look at this court sketch. Was Ghislaine the handler? Or was she also handled? Because the kind of silence she's kept, that kind of silence reeks of protection. Not just for herself, but for whoever was really in charge. So let's talk about the island. Not just a vacation spot. Not just a mansion with a weird temple and a blue striped dome. Nope. This was headquarters. Little St. James, Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, was purchased in 1998 for around $7 million. But what was built there? That cost way more. We're talking full staff, underground tunnels, surveillance rooms, imported landscaping, private docks, and a guest list that'll make your jaw hit the floor. He called it Little St. Jeff, but locals called it something else. They called it Pedophile Island.
Jeffrey Epstein is now best known as a predator and convicted criminal, but before he was outed as a monster, he used his mega millions to buy mansions all over. And he didn't stop there. Jeffrey went all out buying his own island, now dubbed Pedophile Island, and it's actually a tourist attraction in the Caribbean these days. This private island has gained worldwide media attention for its troubling ties to the sexual abuse allegations against him. In fact, it was this residence where Epstein had trafficked underage girls to the island for inappropriate acts, and up until his arrest in July of 2019, this was considered his primary residence. Jeffrey had purchased Little St. James, which was a roughly 75-acre private island in the Virgin Islands, in 1998 for $7.95 million, and his property grew. In fact, by 2008, Epstein had built a 5-building compound and even had a staff of 70.
They saw young girls, high-profile visitors, and boats coming in and out like clockwork. But here is what makes this place different: jurisdiction. Take a look at this map. When you're operating in the Virgin Islands, you're under U.S. control, technically. But there's a lot of wiggle room when it comes to enforcement. Law officials can be influenced, at least the local ones can. Federal eyes are far, far away. And maritime law, well, that's a whole different game. Epstein had boats and private air travel connecting not just to Little St. James, but to nearby islands and even South America. The second island, Great St. James, was purchased later. Why? Expansion, privacy, buffer zone, and let's not forget, a lot can happen in international waters. Once you're far enough off the coast, you're not under standard U.S. legal oversight anymore. Combine that with the shell companies, fake trust, and offshore banking, you've built the perfect place to move people, money, and secrets without ever touching dry land. And you think all of this stayed hidden because Epstein was smart? Nope. Actually, he wasn't that smart. It stayed hidden because someone wanted it hidden. Someone more powerful than Epstein. Because when those girls escaped, and when the story started leaking, when the staff started whispering to reporters, and locals started to ask questions, nothing happened. Not right away. Because even the location itself was strategic cover. He built infrastructure with one goal in mind, not just to abuse, but to systematically compromise people in power. And the worst part, there were rumors. Rumors of tunnels, and of foreign girls, of young girls who never left. Yes, that's one of the darkest and most disturbing threads in this entire story. It's why we're not just talking about abuse. We're talking about trafficking, blackmail, and potentially unalivement. Let's break it down. Multiple whistleblowers and locals in the Virgin Islands claimed that young girls would arrive, but were never seen leaving. Some said they looked as young as 12 or 13. And some were allegedly brought in from Eastern Europe, South America, and parts of Asia. And staffers spoke anonymously to journalists about rules to never speak to or look at the girls. There were rumors of underground tunnels on Little St. James.
Detailed look at the interior. No one has ever seen this before. Here we go. You are looking inside this mysterious building, and the walls are covered with what appears to be a marble textured finish and a wooden bookshelf with one solid column on the left and one spiraling shape stretching to the ceiling on the right. And if you look up at the top of this mysterious temple, you'll see what appears to be a detailed celestial painting filled with astrological figures. But before we dive too deep into that, let's just take a step back. Back in 2019, Jeffrey Epstein's arrest for sex trafficking set the internet on fire, and one image became iconic. This mysterious building on his private island, Little St. James, located in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The gold dome represented those on the religious structures around the world, like the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. We found that Epstein's temple most closely resembles this building in Aleppo, Syria, a bathhouse constructed in the year 1384 by a Muslim dynasty. There are obvious similarities, such as the gold dome roof and the stripes, But also notice the identical stripe pattern around the tops of the arches. There is no record of Epstein ever traveling to Syria. His family descended from European Jews who immigrated to America. He was born and raised in Brooklyn. Now, in one room of Epstein's island compound, we saw a framed photo of his elementary school. This is the actual photograph of the image inside the frame. This would turn out to be Coney Island's Public School 188, named after Michael E. Birdie. Building permits filed in 2010 for Epstein's island compound didn't include the temple. They instead proposed that an octagonal music pavilion with a grand piano be built on the site. But around 2012, the temple was constructed instead. Now, until now, no one has ever published video taken from inside this structure. In 2019, the closest thing to it was Business Insider releasing the account of a local piano tuner, Patrick Barron, who alleged that he visited the temple to service a piano it contained. However, the video we obtained shows an interior that differs from Barron's description. Through this never-before-seen footage, we show you what it was like to visit inside Epstein's temple. You travel up a gravelly road that hugs the tropical hillside, past what appears to be a helicopter landing site, which is situated in a discreet green field where Epstein and his elite guests would arrive by air.
To this day, no full forensic investigation of the island's underground architecture has ever been made public. Now, in 2020, after Epstein's death, construction equipment was seen on the island, clearing out areas before any formal investigations could even occur. The timing was suspicious, to say the least. You want to know what evil looks like in plain sight? It looks like a courtroom where the predator gets immunity and the victims get gag orders. It looks like a teenage girl reporting her abuse, only to have the police report disappear, the prosecutor fold, and the media to turn their back. Take a look at this. That article cracked the case wide open. It wasn't the FBI. It wasn't a celebrity. It was journalism, and it was long overdue. Let's be clear. Epstein didn't operate alone, and he didn't operate in silence. There were girls, some as young as 12, who came forward. There were victims who were flown in, passed around, and promised modeling gigs, scholarships, or nothing at all, just silence. And some of those girls never came home. Take a look at this clip.
I was a baby stuck in a world where grown-ups were allowed to do whatever they wanted, and I was lost.
It's such a shiny, glossy world, that one, full of celebrities and wealth. But beneath, it's nothing like that, it seems.
Money should not be able to buy you the power to get away with hurting people, and it's not normal. I don't care how rich you are. You have the privilege of being wealthy. Great, fantastic. Do something great about it. Do something good with your money. I mean, how evil do people have to be to just let that happen? I don't understand it.
You know, Epstein's wealth was so vast. You know, the fact that he had this fleet of planes. We've heard a lot about the Lolita Express. Mm-hmm. What happened on the Lolita Express?
Everything that happened on the Lolita Express and his other planes was the same thing that happened in his bedrooms and the massage rooms, on the beach, wherever we were. The abuse did not stop because we're in the air. 95% of the time, there was always sex involved. Jeffrey couldn't take a 2-hour flight without having to ejaculate. Like, that's how sick this man was.
How did you live every day? How did you get on board that plane? How did you live knowing you're going off to New York or to the island or to wherever you were about to be trafficked to? You must have been a ball of dread and anxiety.
I was horrified. I was sad. I was angry. I was disgusted. I was a shell, and the only way that I could cope with what I was going through was, taking Xanax. And Xanax is like an anti-anxiety tablet, but it also, it took away that feeling of anger, sadness. It made me feel numb. It was a numbing tablet, and it helped me cope with what was going on at the time. It took a lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists, All these people knew what was going on. Hairstylists. I mean, the list goes on. I could keep going on and on and on. Drivers, chauffeurs, butlers, housemaids. It took all of these people turning a blind eye, which they weren't blind to because we were right there blatantly in front of them. They knew exactly what was going on. Everyone's turned a blind eye in the place where I was supposed to be protected, in my country where I was supposed to be protected. The justice system failed us then. Being a mother, being a wife, being a daughter, I feel like it's my responsibility. I think it's everyone's responsibility in the world to not let our children grow up in an era where sex trafficking is the most profitable industry in the world. It's $100 billion profit a year just on human trafficking, just on modern day slavery. How is that not being talked about? How is that even happening?
She was one of the few who didn't back down. And you know what happened? She got dragged through the mud while the royal family lawyered up. One victim, closely tied to the Prince Andrew allegations, was reportedly hit by a car, then survived another accident, and finally died in a third. You think that's coincidence? They tried to silence her 3 times, and in the end, they succeeded. But the silence doesn't end there. Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, had the Epstein client list on her desk. Kash Patel said he saw it with its own eyes, and yet the list just vanished. No arrests, no indictments, just poof. This wasn't justice. This was a cleanup job, an inside cleanup job. Because once victims started talking, and once journalists started digging, once the public started asking, well, who else knew? That's when the system kicked in. Not to protect the innocent, but to protect the powerful.